Welcome back to the 30th of remaking Hotline Miami in GameMaker Studio, and today we're going to refine the AI. So for example, once we are in aggro range, which can be used for melee or for ranged attacks, then the enemy is starting to shoot, and for example once we are out of this second kind of bluish bubble, then the enemy goes to this red point, so the one last position, checking out, oh, there's no player there, and then alrighty, let's go home. And then for example, of course you can re-trigger that. I said re-trigger that. Yeah. So as you can see, it does work. And then for example, we can just kind of have a pretty neat artificial intelligence which is shooting at us. So if you want to know that, stick around. This is OneUp Indie. I am a developer, so if you like what you're seeing, hey, why not consider sharing, liking and subscribing. Alrighty, so this is the concept, pretty simple. So basically what we did last time, just a quick refresh. So for example, once we are in the line of sight of this enemy, then he tried to come close to us as possible, and then for example the AI was being refreshed. And now for example what I will introduce is basically an aggro range for the enemy. So for example, if we are in this kind of range, which can be used for ranged or for melee weapons, and of course you have a smaller range, then once we are in this range, then we go into an attack state of the enemy. And then for example, once the player goes out, then we have kind of a second range, which is then the bluish, and this is a little bit bigger, and of course I said bluish. Yep, this is perfect. I love it. And then for example, once we are still in this, then the enemy, for example, if he is ranged, then he still attacks. And then for example, once we go out of this one, the enemy is like, oh, then he's starting to search for the last position. And then boom, if he's finding nothing, he's going back to his original position. And if not, well, we can re-trigger going to the player, then once again in aggro, and then we can start shooting or meleeing again. This is basically the whole stuff and spiel of this video tutorial. Alrighty, so the first thing, a little thing which is quality. Is it quality? Yeah, quality sounds definitely good. So first of all, we will introduce to the enemy, where's the enemy, this dude here, we introduce a new variable, ICU angle. This is a little thing for what I did last time. So for example, we had our straight line, too many stuff as it seems. We had our perfect line, and then for example we had a deviation of 15, and then for example maybe some enemies are snipers, or some for example are on the lookout, and then maybe they have a bigger angle, and therefore to make this justice or to set it differently, we just introduce a new variable. We just say that ICU angle, and this ICU angle we will actually use in, well, here. So for example in our alarm event of our player who's triggering that, and so this is not a hard number but a thing which can be varied for different types of enemies. So boom, there we just go in here, and then this is just basically it. And a second thing which is definitely very useful for our thing. So for example, we want to cancel the path, and then for example if we cancel the path, then there is none, and then we cannot delete one, and therefore this is a good thing. We just say like, hey, if path exists, what kind of path? This path, of course. And then, well, we delete the one which is there, and then therefore later on we will delete it also somewhere else. Alright, so the first thing which we do is we need to define and activate kind of a few things. So first of all, we just need to say like, hey, is the state, so once, for example, once we are seeing the player, is the state, so if state, is it idle, then we can trigger the checking out thing. Boom. So this is pretty good. And then the next thing which we want to do is to calculate a distance from the player to from the enemy to the player. So therefore we need to have two more variables, which are then called attack range and attack range break. So here attack range and attack range break in the create event of the enemy. So if we go just back here very quickly, so this is the red one is the regular attack range and the bluish one is the attack range break. So if we are leaving this bigger bubble, then we need to re-trigger checking out or going back or whatever as for the AI for the enemy. So first of all, we're gonna use this and say like, hey, if distance to object, here we go, to what? To, well, the specific instance which we're having here, because we are on the alarm event. This thing will give back a number. So basically distance to object just means like, hey, from our current enemy in our list, it will be a number. And then, for example, if the number is smaller than the specific attack range, which can be once again a thing that can vary if you like. So for example, melee ones maybe have a smaller attack range and snipers have a bigger one, and so on and so on. So for example, if we have a specific, if we are below this attack range, then we actually do something which is, well, to trigger and put the enemy into a specific state. So we just say like, hey, state is equal to a new state which we haven't established, and I would just call that attack range. Boom. And then, for example, one thing what we need to do is to get rid of the specific path of the enemy, because we don't want him to move. We want him, for example, for shooting, to stand still, and therefore we can just take this one. As you can see, I can recycle very quickly the code, and then we just input it to the enemy. So basically we are still only in the alarm event, and then we just say like, hey, let's get rid of the path which is in this specific enemy in there. So let's get rid of the path so he's not moving, and put the enemy in this new specific state. And a dot was missing here. Alrighty, and then we just put it into this new state. And one little thing, for example, because it's always good to visualize that. For example, once you remember, we had these emotes, and now we can actually use the emote for attacking. Where do we have those emotes? In the step event of the enemy. And then, for example, we can just copy paste an example state and then link it to the specific enemy in question. And then, for example, we just say like, hey, let's give it to this new state, which is then for this specific new emote, and then we are pretty much fine. So this is pretty good, but we don't want the emote to be popping all the time up. So therefore we just say like, hey, give it a little and here as a condition. Are we not in this specific state? Great, then trigger this. So for example, we just say not. So are we in this specific range? And we are not already in an attack range state. Cool, then let's trigger this state. So, and then we are pretty much done with the alarm event of the player. So this is pretty good. We can already almost test it out, just almost. One little thing, so for example, let's get rid of those lines. Should we not? Actually, we don't have to. So we can just use the ICU angle and add it here. Boom, as you can see, now we can recycle the code. And here we want to draw a few new circles, which is then just signifying, hey, the aggro range, and then, for example, the break range for the enemy. So how can we do this? Well, with the draw circle. So we just copy paste that because this shouldn't be too difficult stuff. So we just say, hey, draw a circle with our attack range in red. So this is the smaller bubble around the enemy, and then boom, attack range break. This is the blue one, which is a little bit bigger. So let's check this out. And this is a little bit too much stuff, but as you can see, this is our, well, the circle of sight. Then the bluish one is where we're still attacking. The reddish one where we are definitely attacking. So this is where we start. And then, for example, let's say he's going towards us, and then you can see, we are now in an attack range, and then he's, well, already starting to, in quotations, attack us. But of course, we haven't defined the state, so therefore he's now stuck in forever for this. Now you're a goner. Alrighty. So the first thing which we need to do is, first of all, what we need to say and define the state in which we are in. So once again, this is in the step event of the enemy. We just say like, hey, if, then state attack range, boom. And then what do we do here? Well, a few things. So first of all, we want our enemy to, well, look towards the player. Way, for example, he's preparing to shoot, or he's reloading, or whatever you want to call that, doesn't really matter. Therefore, so we want to turn towards the player. So turn towards the player. How can we do this? Well, kind of easy. We just take the image angle and override it here in this specific state to point direction, and from us to, well, the object player. Here we go, X, and object player Y, and therefore we're just turning around instantly while we are reloading or preparing to shoot or whatever. Easy peasy stuff. So now we just say like, hey, can we actually attack? And then we need to check. So how can we do this? Kind of easy. For that, we introduce more variables, which is then called attack timer and attack time. And here those values can be overwritten by initializing or whatever. So here, once again, this is then, for example, every second we are attacking one time, so creating one bullet, and therefore we are running this timer down, and then, for example, once the timer is down, we shoot, and then we do this, we reset it, and then therefore we kind of reload it. So we just say like, hey, attack timer minus minus, so basically we run it down, and then we're saying like, hey, if the attack timer has run down, what do? Well, first of all, we reload. So attack time is attack time, so basically reload, and for now nothing is really happening. So therefore we need something we need to shoot at, or we need something which we want to shoot, and therefore we kind of copy and paste this object shot which we already had. So then we just call it enemy. Here we go. And then, for example, we go in there quickly. So we are not colliding with ourselves, we are colliding with the player because this is our target. So object player, and then here we just for now we just go instance destroy. So basically we just destroy here we go, destroy ourselves, and the rest, well, this is just for the flickering, or for example after a timer runs down then it's being destroyed and so on. So basically just a few fail safes, just copy paste, nothing too specific in here. Okay, so first of all, what do? Well, we just say like, hey, var shot, and then instance create layer, and then for now we just not shooting it correctly where it's supposed to be, but this doesn't really matter to us. And then what do? We just give the shot a few instructions. So first of all, we need to fly, therefore we just give it a speed value of let's go 8, and we need to go in a specific direction. Which direction was it? Well, the same as where we are looking at. So basically, boom. Of course, we can go for iRandom range. Let's go minus 10 to 10. So basically, the shooter is not very good, and therefore we have kind of a deviation between well, 10 degrees upwards and downwards. Of course, maybe this is a little bit much, but this is already pretty good. So let's check this out. Already really strange thing, I was not sure what that is. So basically I just input instances instead of layer. So let's check this out once again. Alrighty, so we are shooting. As you can see, the enemy is perfectly targeting us. Alrighty, so this is working, and now kind of we are stuck in a loop, which isn't too good, and therefore we need to utilize our second range, and at which we just say like, yeah, the enemy is too far off, so let's do something else. So let's first of all say like, hey, if distance to object or to point, let's go object player. Of course, the player always needs to be there. Is smaller than our break range. So for example, we are kind of still in this bluish range, then we are still shooting, else we say like, okay, this makes no sense, the enemy is out of our range. So what do? Well, we just say like, hey, state, and then check out. And now this would be okay-ish, but still we want the enemy to go to a specific point at least once and just check out, because we cannot use the old target positions. Therefore we need to take new ones. So let's see, for example, how this would look like, and then you will hopefully understand. Alrighty, so let's see. For example, we are attacking, we are still in this bluish area, and then for example, once we are out, then he's like, oh, and then as you can see, he's going to the last target position, which wasn't too good. So how do we remedy that? Well, we just basically say like, hey, we want our target position to go where? Well, where the player is. So player X, then player Y, and this should work fine now. Alrighty, final test. So we are in the aggro range, he's attacking, still in the blue. And then for example, as you can see here, last position, and then ooh, he's coming very close. Like, nothing here. Okay, let's go back, and then we can re-trigger the shooting. And this is basically the whole thing, and this works pretty neat also. And of course, if you want to have a few this a little bit faster, like in Hotline Miami, well, then you need to put down the reaction timers a little bit lower, and then you do it almost instantly. So let's say after, I would say 10 steps or something, and then boom, we are starting to shoot. Alrighty, that was it from my side. Hopefully you enjoyed this, quite a few things, long video, I know, and see you in the next one. Have a good one. One up indie.